Hello, my name is Matthew Martinez, and I don't have a guest with me. Isn't that weird? Yeah, so I'm kind of doing a bit of an addendum right now. I'm kind of going back in, and I wanted to talk about some things that I guess didn't really get covered in our first podcast. It was our first podcast. We didn't really cover enough information about specific sources, as well as I never really gave my thoughts on any of the sources that we tried bringing up. I was mostly William that gave it out. So I do want to go in and give my own points and talk about a couple more sources here that I kind of pushed aside. So firstly, I want to talk about the first book that we brought up, which was, if I am correct, yes, the academic journal that we had was The Burden of Adult ADHD and Comorbid Psychiatric and Neurological Disorders. My pardon. And so the reason that I picked this source specifically is because to me it speaks volumes and explains quite a bit about myself and about other people who I've met. William had brought it up in the podcast, but for me, I feel that, the topic of ADHD has kind of branched out several degrees further outward. Me personally, I could very easily see a link between ADHD and anxiety. I have both of those things, and it is pretty easy to assume, with the result of this book, that those could have been linked together and could perhaps be the reason why I have both of those kinds of disorders because of ADHD. And of course, this has affected my learning all throughout my life. Too scared to really open up a book and try, too scared to do any tests, too scared to do most things, and I wasn't even able to pay attention to the first place. So growing up, I kind of just thought, oh, I should be scared because I don't think I'm going to be able to succeed at this kind of venture. Now, the one that I didn't really talk too much about, apologies. On the first source, the author of such was Stefano Palanti. Now he is a director of ISN and a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Stanford University. He's a very qualified man. Now, the source that we didn't really talk about too much was the source, if I can find it. Here it is we never really got the chance to talk about do working memory deficits underlie reading problems and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And this article discusses how ADHD affects children and if that affects their focus or if it affects their memory. Essentially, just how does ADHD impact children in a school environment? And we never really got a chance to talk about this one because we always talked about the contrast. That we kind of jumped from this into the contrasting. So I do want to take a moment to just kind of talk a bit ad nauseum about this specific source. Firstly, growing up as a child, I would say I've had it. Ever since then, I would say I've had ADHD, and I can say with full certainty, it has affected memory. I struggle to remember most things. I struggle to remember a lot of topics that were there at the time because I never really paid attention. And that that really does kind of feed into this point that these three articles are trying to make, and this is where the compare comes in. But the idea of ADHD in children bringing down memory feeds into how ADHD kind of drags down your ability to learn. It makes you not able to focus. It makes you not able to retain memory, and as a result, it's very tricky to kind of go in and really ask yourself, like, oh, what's this, what's that, you kind of have to study daily at nauseum again and again and again. And this article proves that very well, because you don't really have that ability to keep in mind memory. You don't really have that ability to kind of hold forth that knowledge, and that kind of, and you don't really have the ability to hold that information within you for a very long stretch of time. Maybe for a test, sure, but if you're not doing any studying 24/7, then it is super hard to maintain that kind of focus. And as a result, I can say that this is kind of the main point as to why people like me, as proven by this article, struggle so much. And it is evident of a problem that goes forth up until your college years, up until your job days, up until the workforce. And so, yeah, I believe this article shares a lot of information that I personally have provided, that I have been given. This experience that I've had with ADHD has been proven has kind of proven this article's worth, because it is extremely accurate to what I have faced growing up. Secondly, I believe we did talk about this article once again, apologies. With the second source, the author was Michael J. Koffler, and he's a graduate of Florida State University and an expert in the field of neurodivergence. Now, finally, and I believe we did talk about this one a pretty hefty amount, but it is still beneficial for me to go over and give my thoughts on it once again, is goal management training for adults with ADHD clients experiences with a group-based intervention. This was done by Emily S. Nordby. Now, what this article is essentially saying is that people in groups work better together when they have ADHD, rather than being individual with ADHD. I agree and disagree with this. Personally, I think that with ADHD, working with people who know how to help you out and who know, like, hey, do this, do that, hey, I'm here to guide you through everything. Essentially, like, bringing out your strengths and making sure that you're not off topic or off track, that helps a lot. In my experience, yes, that has worked when I am with a group of people who know how to narrow down my topic to the point where it is helpful, to the point where I am a helpful part of the discussion or the work that we are doing. It is helpful. What I don't agree with is that it's not acknowledging the fact that ADHD is not good with focusing. And by that I mean it's really easy to get off topic. It's really easy to lose track of what you're doing, and as a result, it's pretty easy to get distracted by other people in your party. It's very easy to think one thing and then immediately someone is doing something, and then you lose focus and lose track, and as a result, you don't know what you're doing anymore, and you lost focus. You lost the ability to work in a comprehensive state, and that can be detrimental. That can be extremely detrimental to what you're doing. And once again, this is from personal experience. I have gone through that kind of thing, and it's pretty unfun, I will say, to just kind of bear burden with that. And with that, those are my thoughts, and that is a more in-depth discussion conversation with the source about children and how they are dealt with ADHD. Essentially, this is just a better kind of way of addressing this kind of stuff, because I know that we never really got to talk about our third source, which is now the second source that had been brought up. So with that concludes this small little addendum, and I thank you greatly for your attention and your time.